Someone once told me the grass is much greener.
I still need to watch all of this show in order.
There is a mixture of sadness, but at the same time there's a mixture of a little bit of humor, which you can definitely expect in this series.
Every character has multiple dimensions, really.
Obviously it's a scripted show, but they don't feel scripted. They feel real. They feel genuine.
If kids find value in things, I think there is value in them. Because it is art in its own way, and it is very important.
Whatever it is, just own it. Love what you do and do what you love.
If it's cool to you, then, who cares about what the others say?
Someone once told me the grass is much greener on the other side.
Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of We're In Between, the podcast that discusses about As Told by Ginger once a week. I am Patricia.
And I'm Ashli.
And unfortunately, Casey is unable to join us, so it'll just be the two of us this time. So we have ourselves a bonus podcast for you guys, and we have ourselves a very special guest. We have actor, musician, composer, producer, director, everything but the kitchen sink. He was the voice of Darren Patterson. We have Kenn Michael. Ken, welcome to We're In Between.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Great to be here.
Awesome. So, I guess I could start things off. So, what was your first love? Was it acting or music?
I think the first language is music, and it's a combination of music and technology. So, very, very early on, when I was a baby and a toddler, I was always fascinated with tape recorders, anything that recorded a video signal or an audio signal, and then, of course, music. So, piano, drums, bass, guitar, and then synthesizers, of course, because that was part of the technology part. So that was really the first language, the first love. And then the acting thing came because I loved being in front of the camera. I loved, sort of doing what now is kind of like the vlogging, but I was doing it back in the 80s by myself in my room with a video camera with no outlet, no internet. So, I don't know if that could be like a mental disorder, but so I was doing a lot of that stuff. So the thing though is that I loved having this equipment. I loved having the technology to be able to create this music and these little films that I would do. And all these things cost money, to buy a video camera, to buy a mixing console or a computer or whatever. And there were some kids at my school at the time who were doing modeling, and they were making money. And this was like elementary school. And I saw that as an outlet, as a way. It's like, well, this is stuff I already enjoy doing, being in front of the camera, and I can get paid to do it, which means I could get paid to buy the things that I love, to make the little things that I wanted to do. So that was kind of how that started. And I did, I think, 2 episodes of Reading Rainbow.
Really?
And yeah, so you know how they do the little book reviews, and you can find these on YouTube. I think I may have 1 or 2 of them on my YouTube channel. But it was sort of like, they do the book reviews at the end, and they had a little chyron that came up at the end. It was like, if you want to do one of these, call this number. And I saw that, and I told my dad, I was like, I want to do that. Because that also fit right into the plan. Like, if I can do this, maybe I can get into some acting stuff. And so I did 1 review, and it went really well. And then they brought me back to do another one, I think a year later. And the producer was like telling my parents, like, he's good. You should... he seems like he wants to do this, and, here's some connections. Maybe here's some, some numbers to some agencies and some managers, and let's see what happens. And so that's really how it started. So the acting came as a way to fund my technology habit.
What a fascinating story. So how did you get involved with As Told by Ginger?
Okay, so I'm thinking years now. So this was we're talking mid to late 90s. I was in a show called The Parenthood on the WB for a couple of years, playing Robert Townsend's oldest son. And so there was a lot of momentum behind that. And I think I was doing some other voiceovers here and there, some cartoons here and there, but nothing significant. And towards the end of 1999, I think top of 2000 or something like that, I got a call from my agent, like, "Oh, you're booked to go in to do this show called As Told by Ginger." And to be honest, I didn't even remember auditioning for it. So I was like, well, this is great. I got a booking. Okay. And a lot of times, if you're doing a lot of voice acting, you're doing a lot of stuff, sometimes you audition for a lot of things, and sometimes projects change and shift. So you may audition for one show, and then a year later it may come back as a completely different project, but the producers and the creators liked what you did with the character in the previous iteration, so they may bring you back just to do something on the new version of the project. So I thought maybe that was what As Told by Ginger was. And so I remember going to work the first day and going, oh my God, I don't know what I did for this character. I don't remember this show. So the first thing I do when I get in the booth is I, like, oh, hey, great to see you guys. Okay, great. Hey, can you play me my sample? This is what they call, like, when you're in voice land. Can you play me the voice sample that I did for this? I just want to make sure that I'm in the right ballpark. And I think it's kind of what I said. And then they played it back, and it was me, and it was, okay, I'm doing the pubescent teenager with the cracky voice, and kind of like me, but with a cracky voice. That was kind of like, oh, okay, all right, that's no problem. And it just started, and literally it was the most fun voiceover job I've ever done.
Wow.
Because the energy around the project and the people involved were great. I mean, Emily is amazing, and the directors were incredible. The cast was just so much fun to work with. But the thing that was really great about that show versus a lot of other animation that I had done at the time was the organicness, right? And I think that really comes through when you watch the show. That's why it feels more like a real sort of scripted live action show than a typical cartoon, because the way we do those sessions is that we didn't do a lot of takes. We did maybe 1 or 2 takes tops of a scene, maybe a couple little pickups if, there were some screw ups or, Emily was trying to go for a mood that maybe we weren't capturing. But most of the time we would come in there, we would just fall into character, and we would do these scenes, and we would just have a lot of fun doing them. And I think that's one of the things that made the show feel so great as a viewer, because you could really feel that we were honestly really in these moments, and we were really sort of doing these scenes as actors, not playing it cartoony, right? Which was another big thing.
Right. Ashli, do you have any questions?
What's your favorite episode of As Told by Ginger? And that can either be your favorite for your recording purposes, or your favorite because of, storyline-wise, or whatever the case may be. But what's your favorite episode and why?
The one that comes to mind is the Never Can Say Goodbye, where Darren gets his headgear off. I won't give you all of the spoilers, but I'll give you a little tease of a spoiler. He gets his headgear off, and everybody's like, oh, snap, you're not the headgear nerd anymore. You're actually kind of hot. And so I'll just leave it at that. So the episode was fun for me because, of course, it was just a lot of shifting relationships and a lot of shifting perceptions in the show. So even though I don't think my voice changed that much, I think I started to crack him a little less as he got older, as they went through high school and all that kind of stuff. Again, no spoilers because there's a lot of them. But yeah, no, I think that was one of my favorite episodes. And another favorite episode of mine, and I don't remember the name of it, but there was, and this is another big spoiler, but it has to deal with the shifting of Darren and Ginger's relationship. And when she starts to maybe see that maybe there's something more there because of a dream that she had, and Darren's reaction is pretty much like, wait, what?
That's Dare I Darren.
Yeah. I love that you know these episode titles.
Well, we've been going through the series as a whole, and I've seen the series multiple times. I've known about the show since the very beginning. I've seen the show already like 4 times, so I already know it pretty much by heart.
And I would probably guess that you know the show better than Emily Kapnick.
Yeah, right.
I would bet money.
I mean, I would know about it because I'm a total geek, but, I mean, as for somebody who created the show herself, I mean...
I think you'd be surprised because I think, in any of those types of scenarios, whether you're creating a show, whether you're producing a show, or whether you're, involved in acting in the show, or even, with Jared, who's a good friend of mine, you interviewed him, the composer, when you're in the moment on these types of shows, it's just a week-to-week thing. And I don't want to call it a grind because that's a bad connotation for it. But it's, once you start, you can't stop. And, especially if you're a creator, there's so much work to do. There's, you're working on multiple episodes at once. You're giving notes. You're writing things. And so I think, you have that huge outburst of creativity, that huge outburst of work, and then the show ends, and then you go on to the next show, and then you go on to the next show, and by the time that first show starts to get that sort of cult following years later, so much of it it's sort of out of your ether. So I know Emily, of course, knows a whole lot of stuff about the show, obviously, but I would guarantee that you know more about it now than she does, because you've been studying it, you've been enjoying it, you've been watching it. And that's a great thing. I think for the people who work on those shows, it's always great to meet people who really enjoy the work that we all sort of got to collaborate and get into. So
yeah, I mean,
so we appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you very much. But it's kind of interesting because what you were just bringing up about that you guys are appreciative that we have invited you guys for the podcast to discuss about this, and we really appreciate you guys taking the time to answer our questions and to answer our listeners' questions. But it's also really interesting because I think Casey, Ashli, and I were discussing about this not too long ago, but it seems that, I don't know how many podcasts you've been on, Ken, and you were talking about, like, your other projects that you've been a part of, but, for the people that we've had on so far, like Jared and Aspen and Jackie, they've never been in a podcast where they were discussing about As Told by Ginger, because, it was a show from a long time ago, and, I mean, it was a show that I wouldn't say was, like obscure, but it's not like one that a lot of people talk about when it comes to like
a hit.
Right. It wasn't like a hit compared to either Nicktoons like SpongeBob. So it's always just so fascinating that, when we have our guests on and we talk about these shows and they're like, oh, this is bringing me back so many memories. I really do appreciate that you're still talking about this. It's like, this right here is just amazing to me. And it's amazing to Casey and Ashli as well.
Well, the thing is that, As Told by Ginger was a very, very special show, and we knew that even then at the time. And I know it wasn't even mostly my sort of sentiment, but I know there was a couple of other people on the show who we were just all sitting there going like, this is almost too good to be true. This is almost too much fun. This is almost too comfortable, and the writing is too amazing, and these characters are too great. Like, how long is this actually going to last? Because these types of shows in the moment, usually, they don't really get noticed as much. So you'll do this work, and then like what happened with the show, like it ran 3 seasons. They didn't even air all the stuff at the end. And then it's not until years later where people are like, wait a minute, no, that was actually that was really cool. That was really kind of a cool show. So it's, I know we love it when years later we come in contact with people who are like, no, we're right on the same frequency as you guys. Like we enjoy this show just as much. I know we all wished we could have done more episodes of Ginger. And I know it was a little like, we were a little bummed out when it was like, oh, this is the last one.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, definitely agree that it's such an incredible show. And I really didn't watch it much when it came out for whatever reason, just wasn't wasn't really on my radar. And we just kind of fell back upon it, and really is incredible, and so many emotional moments that you just don't get from other cartoons. What was your favorite part of the process? I guess it's hard to pinpoint a thing, but or like any specific favorite,
I really just love doing the scenes. I mean, really just honestly just doing the work of it, which, we would come in, and I was thinking about this, and I remember it got to a point where, and again, this is not, the production probably sent me scripts ahead of time, but I would usually just go into the booth, and usually it would be maybe 3 or 4 of us in the room doing scenes together. So, maybe like me and Cree and Jackie was there a lot, and of course Melissa Disney, who was incredible as Ginger, of course, and a lot of times I would flip through the script minutes before we would start rolling on a scene, and so a lot of times, the way I viewed it was like, all right, look, as this character, I don't know what's coming next, so I'm going to play these scenes as if I'm not going to read the whole script to know exactly the entire trajectory of the thing, because I want each scene, I want the character to feel like I'm right in this scene right now, and I'm not thinking about what's coming down or what's being foreshadowed or anything. So I would get to experience the show almost like a viewer every time I would go in, because as we'd be going through the script, it was like, oh, here's the next plot point, here's the next story point. Like, oh wow, okay, the character's doing this. Okay, this is fun. And it was that aspect of it, and then of course just having that, that sort of tete-a-tete with the other actors. You're talking about really top-notch, top-shelf voice actors who were working on this show. And, some classic, actors on the show, Lorraine Newman. And, so there was a lot of amazing talent working on the show. So for me, I would always just enjoy working with all these top-shelf people because they're bringing their A game. I'm just having fun. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just in there doing my thing and having a great time and being in awe that, like, I get to do this. You know what I mean? Like, I think voiceover work is one of the most fun acting jobs, in relation to, like, feature acting or sitcom acting or theater acting. Voiceover acting is one of my favorites because you get to go into a booth. It doesn't really matter what you look like. And you go in there and you get to be silly, you get to be bombastic, you get to be over the top, you get to be subdued, you get to, there's so much that you can do, depending on the project, of course. And As Told by Ginger really allowed me to sort of play all those things and have all that kind of fun there. And I feel like I probably did some, because when you're there, they also, sometimes they'll be like, oh, okay, we need you to do like, Spectator 2 in this crowd scene that's shouting some kind of crazy stuff. So even though I was doing Darren, I would get to do like some other random voices that had nothing to do with Darren. And those are always fun too.
Awesome. Sounds really great.
Yeah.
Speaking of, the process, I mean, do you have any like funny behind the scenes stories of, doing the show?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, this is not really too much of a behind the scenes thing, but there was one episode where Darren, they wanted to have Darren sing a song at the end of the episode. And I'm trying to remember what that was about or why.
It was the wrong song, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And and guess what? Actually, one of our listeners from the forums actually wanted you to sing it.
Oh, yeah, that's not going to happen because I don't even remember it. all I remember is, and I'll get back to that person who wanted me to sing it. I'll get to the end of that story. But they had me, they were like, well, we want you to do this thing. We want you to sing. So we're actually going to introduce you to our composer because you're going to go over to his house to record it. I was like, oh, cool. That should be fun. And so that's how I met Jared Faber because I went to his house to record that song. And me being a composer and a tech geek and all that stuff and him being exactly the same thing, I walk in, he's got a really cool studio setup and we start talking gear. And then, like, we're immediately friends, like, instantly, right? And it was almost like, oh, we got to record this song. Because we had been in there for, like, hours talking shop and all this stuff and this and that. And it was like, oh, we got to do the actual thing that we were paid to come here and do. Let's get this song done. And it came out fun. It was a lot of fun. And, Jared and I have been friends ever since. Now it's going on, 18 years?
Yeah, pretty much. That's crazy.
That's nuts. That is crazy. So not necessarily too much of a behind-the-scenes funny story, but somewhat. And recently, Jared, I remember Jared hit me up, I want to say maybe a year or two ago, saying that somebody actually emailed him on his website trying to get a copy of that song.
Wow.
And I think he went into the vaults and he found it, and I think he sent it to that person. And I think he emailed me a copy of it too, because I hadn't heard it in years. I was like, oh, that's fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, throughout the with Aspen and Jackie, we actually learned this from Aspen that apparently, it was supposed to be the case in which before Macy Gray sang the original theme song, and also, we had Melissa and Cree singing it, right before the show became a standard. Dodie and Macy actually sang the theme song as well. So they actually sang it in their respected voices. And, it's a shame that you don't remember the lyrics to the wrong song, but that's okay.
I mean, I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I think if Darren could remember the song, he might do it for you guys. It's such a cool podcast. But maybe him just, showing up a little bit might work a little better. Maybe.
Oh my God.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for your question not being answered, but I hope that made it up. All right.
I hope so too.
Do you have any other questions, Ashli?
Not specifically. Do we want to look at the other forum questions?
Yes.
Start bringing those out?
And before we even get to that, though, I want to say it was due to your channel that I found out that Darren was completely different in the pilot. I didn't know that.
Really? You saw my from pilot to final product on that?
Your video was the first. That was me for the first time going, oh snap! That was a completely different character.
No way! That is so crazy.
Total way. So thank you for that.
Thank you for watching it. That is wow. I didn't even think anybody watched my stuff, but no, thank you. That's awesome. But yeah, it's not only Darren, but of course, I'm not going to give anything about the pilot, Ashli, but right. the design of Miranda's different, and everything was just so different. And we even briefly talked about this in our interview with Aspen, in which he had to sing that pony song and how it was the worst thing ever. We will talk about it much later on. But yeah, I mean, just the way that the way that Darren was, and the way that he spoke, and the headgear, the way he reacted was just so different.
It was so different, and your analysis of it was spot on, because watching it, I'm like, oh, okay, I see why they changed it, because that would have not been sustainable. Nobody would have wanted to watch it with those types of squeak sound effects, and it was just too much.
When we're watching the series again, for the podcast, I mean, you do get to hear it a little bit, but that pilot, it was just like, every 3 seconds, like, oh my God. Yeah. But thank you, Kenn.
It was very much pilot, it was like pilot, what do they call it? Like, it's like, dang it, I can't think of the word. It's, when you do a pilot, like, everything is kind of like low budge, and, everybody's just trying to get it done. So you don't have all the resources that you would normally have on the production of the show. So it just totally felt like that. But I always love seeing those kind of things, to see like, okay, this is how they got the show bought. And then they went in and, okay, let's chisel and streamline some stuff.
Right. But yeah, thank you, Kenn. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I guess now we can finally go over to the questions. And unfortunately, Ashli, a lot of these questions are spoiler-based. Like, season 3 spoilers.
Yeah, so you need to catch up.
No, I'm sorry, man. We'll get there.
Yeah, but I'm going to ask one question that is not spoiler related. So let's see if we can go to that. And
you might have to mute on some of the spoiler questions.
Absolutely,
so you can tell me when I've only read the first one, which is totally fine. The first question, I won't scroll past it to be safe.
Yeah. So it's okay. We're just gonna ask, like, there's only been one spoiler question. I mean, no, one spoiler-free question, and the rest of them are like the spoiler one. So yeah, we'll just ask the spoiler-free one really, really quick. Actually, we actually have 2, so it's good. Okay, so Pink Dolphin 92 asks, what was your first reaction when they told you that you were going to voice Darren?
Oh, okay. So that goes back to the story earlier. I totally didn't even. First of all, I didn't know what the show was, because all I was told was, "Oh, you got a booking. You're doing the show. It's a Nickelodeon thing. Oh, great!" So I was just excited that I was a regular on a show. That right there is enough to be like, "Oh, I don't care what it is. This is going to be fun. This is going to be great." Awesome. So I didn't know who Darren was or anything like that. When I got there, I didn't even remember the audition. So I didn't remember what the show was about. I didn't remember what the character was. So it was all pretty much on the day that all that stuff sort of happened, and sort of listening back to whatever voice I had done on the audition, it was like, okay, I see how I can sort of bring him to life. And then as I started sort of reading about the character, and of course also the artwork, which was also funny, because I looked at it and I was like, that kind of looks like me a little bit in the face. He looks a little bit like me, which I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I feel like as the show went on, the face, like they started sort of making a lot of the characters, and maybe this is just me, look a little bit more like their real life selves.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Aspen and Jackie, they talked about how, they would do like little improvisations of their characters, and how they would kind of like add that into the script to make it feel more organic.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so
Jackie had me cracking up.
Oh my God, Aspen told us so many stories about how Jackie would crack everybody on the set.
She was insanely funny, like crazily funny. Oh, killing the game.
Like, can you name like a story that she would do that? Because
no, almost
probably all blends together. Yeah,
it's too bad.
all I can remember is I just remember being in that booth and sitting there with all those lovely ladies, because most of my scenes were with all the women,
Right.
In the show. So I mean, it was just a lot of fun. It was just great.
Awesome. Okay, our last spoiler-free question comes from Aesthetic Angelito, and he says, how was it when you voiced Darren?
It was a lot of fun. I really sort of made Darren more of an extension of myself, because of the fact that all these characters are so rooted in reality, which is not common in cartoon series. But because they were, rooted in reality, I was able to really approach it like a live action show, more so than, I'm doing a cartoon. So I played him as if I was doing it in live action. I didn't really add too much more. I didn't, take things too cartoony or over the top. He just had his voice crack. That was pretty much what it is. And then, but he was, he was a lot of fun to play, and he was a lot of fun to play through all of his transitions as he got older,
right?
And as he went through all of his own life stuff.
Sure, I will just leave it there.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ashli, we have a lot of spoiler questions, so
you're gonna have to mute it.
I'll message you on Twitter when it's ready to go.
Okay.
Now I want to know what she's doing on her computer while it's muted, because you know what I mean. Like, now she's just sitting there,
God.
I'm
sure. Maybe I don't know. I mean, maybe she can try to get a hold of Casey, and maybe he can quickly ask a question or something.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah. All right. So I think that we're good to go. So here's our first question, and this is from Kenny Murray, and he says, what was your reaction to the somewhat egotistical and selfish development of Darren's character throughout the course of the series? He went from a very kind, nerdy boy to a popular, somewhat shady jock.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that that's kind of an almost natural progression for somebody in his shoes, right? So he had that headgear on for all those years, and he was completely sort of marginalized. Like, no girls were looking at him. He was not the popular guy, even though he was a cool guy. He just had this the headgear on, and I think that's so typical of just what most pre-adolescents deal with. It's like all these really cool people, but bodies are changing and things are awkward, and and people have a preconceived notion of what popular should look like. And so there's so many really cool kids who just don't get that attention because they don't fit that mold. And I think for Darren, he was such a good guy that when his life changed and it was like, oh, wait a minute, I get to be the jock now, I get to be the hot guy. I think all the good guys sort of secretly fantasize of being that guy who the girls want, especially if they're not having that experience. They want that other experience. So if you, if you get the chance to have that kind of experience, I think you're going to run with it. And if nobody's really checking you, if you look at like his older brother and his father, they didn't seem like the type of characters who were going to like say, oh, no, you're, let's make sure that you're still humble and that you're still doing, no, they wanted a jock, right? They got a jock, and he's finally now like stepping up and being that character. I think he's going to sort of lose himself a little bit because now he's the wanted guy on campus. And so I think, I felt like it was a very real progression for him. Do I, like the fact that he was a nice guy? Yes. Do I like the fact that he became kind of a dick? I mean, it's a character. I think it was relevant, and I think it was a cool way for them to go, because that's not a normal progression.
No, definitely not.
On those types of shows, you know what I mean? Like, I think, like everything else, the way that they dealt with things like death and addiction and all these things, like, I think they dealt with that very well, where you suddenly get thrust into the popularity. I think, if you think about, like, what people who gain celebrity, you get thrust onto this public stage, and, nobody's really prepared for that. And whatever kind of stuff that you were struggling with not being popular and not being on that public stage, that stuff comes to the forefront as soon as you're thrust there. So I think that answered the question.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from HeartLovers1717, and she asks, did you relate at all to Darren's struggles? And she pretty much brought up the same thing that Kenny Murray brought up about he started off as somebody who was down to earth and sweet, but then became a jock. And, he also mentioned again about, like, he broke up with Ginger to date Simone because it was easier. Right. And do you think Darren stopped liking himself, and why he had hopes of Ginger renewing her interest in him during the wedding frame?
Right. I think I really just think that the way that they wrote Darren was brilliant, because I feel like it's very honest. It's very honest. So me, I guess I could say I was kind of like a popular kid in school, but that was only because I was acting, right? So I was working and I was on television and all that kind of stuff. So I was popular because of that. And I was popular because I was kind of an outgoing introvert, which is a weird thing. I'm an introvert, but I'm an outgoing introvert. I wasn't an outcast in school, but I didn't really relate myself to the popular kids because in my head, I'm still a nerd. I'm always a nerd and will always be a nerd. But I felt like I was a cool enough nerd to sort of be in both worlds, right? So I could hang out in the popular world, but I could also hang out in the world of, like, the kids who are more like me, who, like, our idea of fun on a Friday night in high school was playing Network Doom at a friend's house. So that dates me and shows how much of a nerd I truly am, and unabashedly, unapologetically. But I completely understand what Darren was going through with the headgear. Myself, I'm a short guy, right? So there's the preconceived notions that come with being a shorter guy, especially in high school, right? So I dealt with height issues the same way that I, thought that Darren dealt with his issues of headgear. So I brought that to his character. And then when he became popular, I got to sort of play out a lot of my fantasies about what I would do if I became that popular kid at school. And of course he would date the popular girls because that's what you do. If you're never able to do that, and that's what society goes, oh, well, you have to do that in order to be a winner, then yeah, that's what he would do. Of course, though, Ginger was his true love. So, he went and played the field a bit, but he eventually came back home because that was where home was for him.
Oh, that's a really great way of saying it.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, let's see. Our next question comes from Destroy the Plastics, and this person says, "What was your?" Yes, I know. Very, very hardcore name. What was your reaction to the wedding frame episode? Did you know that Ginger and Darren were going to be canon, or was this a decision that the directors made for the fan base? As we know, As Told by Ginger ended well, but I think there should have been more episodes before the wedding frame, aiming towards how Ginger and Darren got together, instead of having questions upon questions being asked.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when they, I think it was Emily who told me and Melissa that they were basically, she basically told us how they were wrapping the whole thing up as the whole sort of flash forward, and she was reading from her book, and that Darren was in the audience, and they were married and with a baby and all that stuff, and we were so amped, we were super excited, but I think we were also disappointed that we never really got to play any of those scenes out. It was just, there was no vocalization to be had, or on Darren's part anyway, for that last little, 45 seconds of the episode where they super wrap everything up. But yeah, I was kind of bummed that we didn't get to play any of those scenes. And then I want to say last year at some point, my sister texted me and was like, "Oh my God, they're bringing Ginger back." Oh. And I was like, what? Yeah, and it was that whole thing that happened where it was that rumor that was starting to spread, and I was like, well, there's one or two things. I was like, either if they are bringing it back, they're not bringing me back is why I didn't hear about it. I was like, but Jared would have known, and Jared was like, no, because he's super close with Emily. But it was like, so there was a moment where it was like, that would have been really cool if they would have brought the show back. Even just to do another, just like a movie or something.
Nickelodeon has been doing. Nickelodeon has been doing a lot of TV movies lately. They're doing one for Hey Arnold. They're doing one for Rocko's Modern Life and Invader Zim. So who knows? I mean, an As Told by Ginger TV movie wouldn't be too much of a stretch nowadays.
No, it wouldn't. And you know who's going to have to lead the charge for that? You. Because You have the channel.
Yeah.
You and the subscribers. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Oh my god. I mean, I would be honored if I were to be in charge of the TV movie, but oh man, I don't know.
The thing is that Nickelodeon just needs to know that there is still a huge audience base for that show, and there would be huge interest in making a Ginger movie. And what you're doing with your podcast and your channel, and the audiences that you're attracting and your subscribers and all this is the audience. This is the audience for that movie. So let's grow this audience so that we can bring Ginger back.
That would be kind of interesting. We'll just see where it leads up to.
Exactly.
All right. Okay, we have our next question. This is from Kia Loves Volleyball, and she says, was it fun to relive being a teenager through Darren? And again, asking the questions about Darren's character, and specifically how he dealt with his newfound feelings for Simone and his breakup with Ginger.
Yes. It was totally fun playing Darren. Let me see. I was maybe like 5 or 6 years out of being in high school when I did Ginger, so it wasn't too far back for me to remember, but it was definitely a lot of fun to do those lunchroom scenes and all that kind of stuff. And I remember, scenes talking about the corn and the food in the cafeteria, just all that random stuff that's always fun. I always loved what they wrote for Darren and the show. And the whole Simone thing is hilarious because I don't remember too much of that storyline in particular. There's so much about the show that I don't even remember. And it's almost like I feel like I could totally just watch everything from the beginning and binge it. But then I just wish that there was like a better way to binge it in terms of like where to watch those episodes.
Right.
Because I know they're not on Hulu or not like on Netflix or anything like that. I know there are sites so you can watch all that kind of stuff, but I tend to sort of like it in those little apps, so I could watch it on the Apple TV or just have it in the background, kind of a thing. So I don't. So I mean, if you want to like remind me a little bit about the Simone story.
Well, yeah, from what I remember, it's been a while since I, gotten to that point, because now Casey and Ashli and I were almost finished with season 1, but, I did finish watching it 2 years ago when I was doing As Told by Ginger month, which was kind of like the precursor to the podcast, in which I was, dedicating an entire month when the show was celebrating its 15th anniversary. But it was that, it started off with, Darren and, being in the football team, and he meets up with Simone, and then he slowly starts...
She's a cheerleader, right?
Yeah, she's the cheerleader.
Right.
That's how they met. And so he slowly starts cheating on her, and Dodie finds out, and, she's keeping the secret, and then eventually in the episode where Darren breaks up with Ginger, she gets appendicitis, and...
that's right.
And, he goes over to the hospital. He's really tormented on whether he should confront her or not, even after their breakup, but he almost writes the letter, and he kind of crumbles it and throws it away, and... So we have, especially with their meetups toward the series, and then eventually we have the wedding frame in which you see Darren conflicted on whether he should be with Ginger or whether he should stay with Simone.
With Simone, right. I just feel like that's all just such real stuff, and it's just so meaty for a cartoon. And I think that's probably why it wasn't as popular, because it was, I don't want to say it was a drama, but it was a dramedy. It was a dramedy that just happened to be animated. Because they could have totally done that live action.
That's exactly...
Not on Nickelodeon.
That's exactly what Jackie said. Yeah.
I mean, and that's just, that's how good the writing is. So when Emily did Suburgatory feels very much like Ginger, because it's the same essence.
That's what Jared said.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
So I don't know about the Simone thing, but definitely, I think that's a real thing that the guys go through, trying to figure out, there's this one, but then there's this one, and which one do I go with? And I love them both for different reasons, and I'm conflicted because I don't have my stuff together. I'm still trying to figure out my life and what's important, and it's a lot of heavy stuff for a teenager. And a lot of responsibility, socially, just like dealing with relationships.
Yeah. All right, we have one more question, and this is from the same person who wanted you to sing the wrong song. Her name is GingerFan1990, and she says, were you glad that Ginger and Darren ended up together in the end?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like you know, there's always those shows where there's always that love tension between two best friends in a show, and you're just like, when are they going to end up together already? They just need to end up together already. And so what's great is that they played that within the show. They were together, they weren't together, they were together, they weren't. But I think the decision is to say, like, okay, they did end up together ultimately, I think was a great way to wrap it up. I know Melissa and I were very happy.
That's good. All right, that's it for the questions. So let me just get Ashli back. Were you able to get Casey on, or
Awesome.
is he still stuck in the subway?
I think he just got back, but I don't know if he
Get him on.
like
Get him on,
or I'm not
Casey,
sure.
come
Here,
on.
I'll see.
All right, I'm gonna add him. I'm gonna add him to the call to see if he can join.
Because you guys talk about other Nickelodeon shows and stuff too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, me and Casey have a podcast called the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast, and every Friday we discuss various Nicktoons, and it's been a blast.
Wow. Yeah, because one of the amazing, you know, when I started doing Ginger, and you know, you're kind of at that point sort of in the Klasky Chupo family to some extent. I want to say I did like an episode of Rocket Power and an episode of. I think I did like Rugrats All Grown Up.
Oh.
I did like something on there, or because they'll just call you in to do like a voice here and there and that kind of stuff. So that's always fun. But you know, growing up with Nickelodeon, and I also did some on-camera stuff for the Kids' Choice Awards, but like the early days of the Kids' Choice Awards, doing commercials for that, and so there's definitely, you know, Nickelodeon.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm sure we could find a place for you somewhere amongst our madness if you're interested.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And
Wait, hold on. BC said link me. I'll throw him the link real quick.
Oh,
he might be able to get in here for a hot second.
I'll give him the link. Yeah, give me 1 second.
Let's see if we can get him here.
Yes, let's end it off with Casey being on here.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Hello, Casey.
The view from the Upper East Side where I live, of course. It's not. I'm dog sitting. Hello.
So you're...
Hey.
All right.
How's it going? Glad you could join.
Yeah, thank you. How'd the interview go, everyone?
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. We just finished talking about the spoiler question, so yeah, why don't you ask a question for Kenn?
Ooh, I'm on the spot. Okay. Thank you. And feel free.
Don't ask anything we already asked, Casey.
Right.
That's what I was gonna say.
How could he know? Like, how could he know when we...
Feel
He
free
should know. He should...
to ask anything that's already been asked. I guess... I'm curious how old you were at the time you voiced Darren, and sort of how you were able to connect to playing, you know, essentially a kid, when I assume you were not one.
Right. No, that's a great question. It was probably about 23, 24. When we started that. So not too far away from the high school experience, but definitely, like, you know, in the adult or what I thought was more of the adult place. I think, you know, in your 20s, you think you're an adult, but sort of not really. So I mean, you know, I felt like, I'm, you know, the older guy sort of doing the teenager voice, but it wasn't that big of a difference. And the fact that I think I can still do the crack, I can still do the voicing the same way I was doing it back then. But it was a nice throwback to what I remember high school to be. And so it was fun. It was fun. It wasn't too much of a stretch, to be honest, because I was also doing on-camera stuff around that time period where I was still sort of playing these younger characters. So it all kind of matched up.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. And have you done any voice recreation for us yet? Has Patricia asked you?
Well, I mean, there was a question.
Got a brief moment there.
Yeah, we had a brief moment.
Yeah, a brief moment. Like, he stopped by, so he's here again. Like, it's cool. Casey, for you to, like, you know, I know you were on the subway and everything. New York is really cool. I've never been to New York, but that's really, and that's Darren's speaking. He's
That's
never
amazing.
been. I'm from, So, yeah, you know, this podcast is really cool, and yeah.
Love it. Awesome.
Darren is still fun to voice. He's still fun to voice.
And we never had a Darren version of the theme song, did we? I know a lot of the
I asked Jared, and he said that only Aspen and Jackie were the ones who did it, besides Cree and Melissa. There was a song that Ken sung called The Wrong Song, but unfortunately he doesn't remember the lyrics, so unfortunately no singing today.
That's been a trend, I think. There's no reason, I guess, for you guys to remember the minor songs from the show.
The crazy thing about it is, like, when I started really thinking about, that was like 17 years ago. Wow. And then you just start thinking about the actual, like, the magnitude of that much time. Mm-hmm. And what's amazing, though, is that like what you guys are doing with the channel and the podcast, and really bringing life to these shows so that they can continue to live on. It's great because it really compresses time to think that 17 years went by, but yet the material still feels very fresh. The only way that you kind of know it's old is that there's no HD versions of these shows. But other than that, like, the material is still pretty fresh and it's still super relatable. I think the stories probably would have been different they referenced
a VCR once.
Right, exactly. And it's like, that was like, the internet was not really, anything that it is now. So I think a lot of the stories would have probably been different based on just dealing with social media as being the primary form of social interaction these days.
I hadn't seen that. I'm sure if it were made in 2017, there would be an episode about cyberbullying.
Absolutely.
Happening in chat rooms. Interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely still universal as far as adolescence is more or less going to be the same confusing mess as it always has been.
Oh, totally. Now, interestingly enough, you asking the question about, what was it like to play Darren as an adult playing a teenager? And I really now want to ask Emily, how are you writing these shows about teenagers and adolescents and really, really keying into it? Because I'm sure she's had that was a very, very strong period in her life where she had a lot of material that she could, base her stuff off of, or she could pull from. But I think that's always kind of an interesting question when you have to. I have a friend who does a lot of on-camera acting. She's an actress, and she's kind of known in the industry to be, she's. I don't want to date her, but she's been doing this as long as I have, and she's still playing teenagers. She's still kind of playing teenagers, and people are like, "How are you still playing teenagers when you could have a huge family of your own and all this stuff?" But I think it's an interesting thing that we do in this industry of having this sort of time shift and time jump and sort of and be able to tap into our childhood and all that stuff. I feel like I'm rambling, getting onto a rant here, but you get the point.
I feel like a lot of that is a testament to Emily's writing and how natural it is and how it really feels like you're just watching these preteens and teenagers hang out. It feels so real.
And that's what I was talking about a little earlier. The way that we would do those sessions is, a lot of these other cartoons that I would do, they would get super micromanaged about each line and each word, and we do tons of takes, and the director will try this. And but with Ginger, it was just more like super relaxed, and we would just do one or two takes, and we would get the vibe, and unless anybody messed up, we would just move on. And I think that was just a huge part of the way that show felt, and that's why it did feel like, we're just sort of peering into the lives of these teenagers.
Right. And now I assume, so we've talked with some of the other actors on the show about that they sort of had their posse that they would record with, right? So Ginger, Dodie would all record together. And Darren kind of floats around a bit. And I imagine there were times when you had to record alone. Is that correct? So
But the alone stuff is actually pretty normal. Well, you get used to that, right? Because you come in, and a lot of times, depending on who you are within the sort of the hierarchy of the show, if you're a main character, if you're sort of a secondary main character, and depending on scheduling stuff, they may, you may just do your whole episode by yourself, and that's okay. It's not as much fun, obviously, but you know, you're prepared for that, and that's not too bad. But it was really those scenes where, you know, everybody's in the booth together, and it would usually be, you know, me, Ginger, and Macy and Dodie. That was primarily the thing, and then Cree was in there as well with Miranda. So I did a lot of scenes with her when spoiler.
Yeah, we don't want to have that happen again.
Exactly.
Or Casey. Casey's at the same point I am.
Oh, okay, great. So, okay, good to know. Yeah, so, you know, so being with, like, the other ladies was always so much more fun than having to do the scenes by myself, because, you know, Jackie would always have us crying and cracking up because
everyone has done that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then, you know, Cree is just incredible, and, you know, I forget who played. Was that Aspen who played Dodie?
No, she played Aspen.
Courtney.
No, Aspen played Courtney. Aspen played Dodie. Liz played Courtney.
Right. Okay, got you. Right. So, yeah, and yeah, so it was always much better to do the scenes with the other actors, because then you get the vibe, then you get to play off of each other, and then also that's also a good opportunity to sort of create little jokes and little improv things that you might be able to put in there.
For sure. So would they have like recordings of the other actors, or would they just have like a reader for lines that weren't yours if you were alone?
Yeah, if I was alone, usually the director would read me in.
Okay.
And so, you know, I'd be in the booth, and then, you know, so you'd hear the thing click over and they'd read the other line, and I would do the stuff. But a lot of the times, you know, they wouldn't read all the lines. They would just sort of lead you in.
Sure.
Unless it was a scene that really needed that pacing back and forth, like some of the more sort of dramatic things. But, you know, it always went by super fast, and you were in and out of those sessions quicker than you wanted to be, because it was always just fun being around all those people. And I think it was, you know, we all missed. It was like when it ended, we knew it was like, this is kind of a drag, because we all really enjoyed working with each other and really being around each other and spending that time.
Awesome. Well, that's pretty much all the like original questions I guess I have. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome.
This is great. Sorry I had to miss the first part.
Well, you get to listen to it. I'm glad that you were able to join in at the end. And it was great talking with you guys about this show.
Thank you, Ken, and special shout out to Jared Faber for letting him get a hold of letting us get a hold of you. So thank you, Jared, if you're listening to this.
Oh, that's
awesome. Jared. Yeah, that's my dude.
So yeah, do you have any? So yeah, that should be it. So do you have anything to plug or self promote?
Oh, that's a good. Well, I have a YouTube channel. It's just Kenn Michael, KENN MICHAEL. I have on that channel at the moment. I wouldn't say it's a wasteland at the moment, but I have a lot of my old commercials and a lot of fun nostalgia. You might want to go through that, and you might remember some of the commercials. You might remember some of the stuff. But stay tuned to that channel, because I have some very interesting things coming up in the next few months. So check that out. And also I have a website, KennMichael.com, same spelling. And all my social media stuff is the same, Kenn Michael, KENN MICHAEL. Reach out on Instagram, Twitter. I'm on all that stuff. So hit me up.
Awesome. Well, once again, Ken, thank you so much for coming on by. It's really awesome.
Thank you, guys.
So yeah, that should be it for this episode. Let us know in the comments below about some of your favorite moments featuring Darren, or if you know of Ken's other work, whether it be from his music or from his acting or whichever. So that should be it for this episode. Hope to see you around soon, and thank you for listening.